And then now we're live. We are now live. Welcome, Kelly van Nelson.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. Good to chat.
Well, that lovely Geordie accent. Tell us first of all about yourself. Well, tell us. I don't know. You've been in like 60 countries, 3 continents, all over the place. But where did it start? You grew up in a fancy manor house, I believe.
I would love to say I grew up in a fancy manor house. I grew up in the equivalent of the Bronx, I guess, in the Northeast. I lived in a council house as a kid in an area that was in the lowest 5% of demographics in the UK. So yeah, very tough background. Definitely not a silver spoon by any means. This Geordie accent is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you should be proud of it, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Traveled around a lot. Yeah, I left when I was.
Where have you travelled to? Where have you travelled to?
I left Newcastle when I was 18 on a one-way ticket. I headed to London and never looked back. And since then, I've lived twice in South Africa, which I'm sure we'll talk about. My husband's from there, and I have a lot of influence from South Africa in my writing. But I also went to lots of far and beyond areas. I've been to Russia, although that was before this year's challenges. I've been to many parts of Africa, all over Europe, and anywhere I can go to, airdrop me in there. I love to experience different cultures and different experiences and food and people, and I will go anywhere. I like to say, if I was not doing what I do today, I should have been a war correspondent, and you could have put me in the hot regions, and I would have.
I wouldn't have been a war correspondent, eh?
I would love to be a war correspondent.
Well, you get to have I'm a war correspondent. You're not really supposed to shoot me, Right?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, a journalist. I would have liked to have been a journalist, but in the regions that nobody wants to go to. I like to live outside of the comfort zone, I would say. So yeah, travel brings that for sure. Nothing is the same, and you're just experiencing life and all that it brings. Yeah.
So with so you went to London, and did what? What did you do when you went to London?
Oh, when I was in Newcastle as a child, it was a challenge. So it was a challenge at home. I come from a very broken home, and lots of challenges in the home, I would say, and in the family. And I also had challenges at school. So I was bullied at school. So it wasn't good at home, wasn't good at school as a youngster. And I always aspired to get out of there, and whatever that would bring. And I knew that there was a different world out there, and I wanted to experience something else than what was kind of in front of me in and around Newcastle. So yeah, I went to London. I had I didn't have huge sort of ideas on the horizon, but I knew that I wanted to explore life, explore new opportunities. I knew I wanted to become financially independent, through working hard and working smart and upskilling myself as well. I left school at 16, which, considering the job I do now and the learning through the years, that's a different kind of career pathway. So I didn't have a great education. So I just wanted to work my way up, work hard, be able to support myself, not rely on other people. And I had aspirations.
Did you cut your education short because, as you say, because of your home situation and the school situation? It's kind of good. I've had enough of this. I'm out of here.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly right.
If I had your first job when you got to London?
My first job, I got a live-in job, which was great. It gave me a roof over the head. I was a receptionist in a very large hotel in central London. So I got my food. It was like mess food. I had accommodation, good colleagues. I did maybe 18 months there. And it was live-in. I literally left Newcastle and looked for live-in jobs. So I was torn between joining the army, becoming an au pair, and this opportunity came up in the old days. It was in a newspaper ad, a little sort of written newspaper ad that said live-in opportunities in London. And I called the number, got an interview, and got on the bus and never went back.
So did you actually start writing then? Like when you had this live-in job, did you have time then to write? Did you?
Yeah, I didn't write the way that I write now, but from even younger, from probably being 12 or 13, I was always reading. I used to firstly read at night until the early hours, actually till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I would read under the duvet with a torch. There was often arguments going on.
You were one of those kids.
I was one of those kids. I never used to switch off the brain at all. And it was a way to tune out of reality, because there was all these arguments going on. There was always tension in the house. It was often I was quite fearful. So I would read anything and everything.
So what would you read as a young girl? What would you have been reading?
I read every book of Enid Blyton's over and over and over again.
Enid
so
Blyton,
books, the Famous Five, The Faraway Tree, all of the Enid Blyton books. And then I read a lot of other adventure books, so Nancy Drew and detective stories, the Hardy Boys, anything I could get my hands on, really. But they were my go-tos. And even today, my kids, I've still got all my print copies of Enid Blyton end-to-end catalogue.
Come again, you got what?
All of the Enid Blyton books my children now have inherited, and I've still got
from when? From when?
Oh, from small, from me being a child. My books and I.
Sorry, how old are these books? How old are these books?
Well, as old as me, so more than 4 decades, let's just say.
So these books are 20 years old, eh?
40 years, yeah. I cannot throw away a book. I don't know about you. I mean, you're a writer like me, an author, and I cannot throw away a book still today. So even though I've moved, I've not just traveled to 60 countries, I've lived in about 20 houses, and I've lived on 3 continents. And my book collection has been the one thing that has survived, traveling around the world and migrating. And
you still drag books with you everywhere you move.
I do. I
have how many books do you think you have?
More than it'd run into thousands. I've got probably 6 or 7 bookshelves, and then they're double stacked, double racked, and then crammed in on top of the books.
So what do you do? So I know you live in Sydney now.
Yeah.
But where do you keep them?
I keep them in. I've got a lounge in Sydney that is almost a library. It's got no TV. It's just got a fireplace, a sofa, and books.
It doesn't have walls. It's got books.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, exactly, and a lot of them, and they are also in a kind of, they're not in chronological order or by author. They are in my kind of sequence. So I've got my poetry books, I've got my cookery books, I've got my books by authors where I have a lot of their collections. So I've got all of Ian Rankin's books.
The question: how do you file your books?
I know exactly where a book is. You could come in the house and I would know the shelf.
I know the shelf. Quirky fun. How do you file them?
I file them by signed books. So if they've been signed by the author, they have a special shelf. And then I file them more by genre than by author. So I've got the crime books, I've got the literary fiction, poetry, short stories, and so on. So more by genre. And then within the genre, then I might go to a certain extent by author, and I'd club all the authors together. So genre first, then author.
I know ours is a bit different here because my wife takes all our books and color. So our books, she files them by color, by the color of the spine. So my novel could be next to a cookbook. So I've got to think when I'm trying to find a book, what color was the spine?
Yeah, but it would look more aesthetically pleasing, I reckon, in your house than my method. Yours would make nice wallpaper if it's color coordinated.
So back to your first job there. You started writing there. What did you write? What were you writing?
I was mainly writing. I I was writing at the time an early rookie sort of crime novel that ended up in the dustbin. It was not good. It was based on a bit of true crime in the UK, and there was a lot of that in Newcastle. It was very gangland related, and I had friends in jail or who had been killed or part of different gang scenes and drug scenes. So there was a lot of crime on the ground in Newcastle. So I was a little bit not fascinated by crime, but it had been in and around where I lived. So I started writing a crime novel, a fiction crime novel, but it was terrible. It wasn't my space at all, and I struggled with it. So I quit about halfway through of a crime manuscript, put it in the bin, and I started writing poetry in London and got some of that work published in just some sort of literary magazines and things. I had, again, a lot of it was urban poetry about Newcastle life and about, the Margaret Thatcher era, which was the era that I grew up in. And a lot of the, mining and strike actions and unionized work and things like that. So I started writing poetry.
Can I ask you? Yeah. I know you more by your poetry than your recently announced book, which we shall get to. That poem that you write it's a rhyming poem about the coal workers.
Oh, Miners of the North, that one?
Yes. Have you got it to hand?
I can give it a go. Yeah, I know exactly the one you mean. That one is in the Margaret Thatcher era. Do you want me to give that one a go?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. So this would be actually probably the first poem that I penned and had published. It might not have been the first poem I penned. It was definitely the first poem that I had published. I'll give it a go. I know exactly the one. Give me a second. Black sedimentary rocks create sizzling flares, fossil fuel combusting akin to illicit affairs, blasting out coals satisfying political desire, Earth's minerals giving origin to fire, a flourishing period lifelong friendships morph between unsung heroes, coal miners of the North. Navigating tunnels through bleak underground cavern, faces surface, gulp air before propping up tavern. Fingernails filthy, paws clogged with sweat, black lung disease, lest we forget. Masses bullied by unions, dogged with remorse into pickets of unsung heroes, the coal miners of the North. Depressed in the darkness, deprived of the sun, men afraid and confused, fighting with no gun. Voices passionate for what they believe, preventing pit closures, supporting working class poverty, reprieve. Paparazzi emerge, hungry piranhas report, dirt on unsung heroes, coal miners of the North. Steadfast in cabinet, an infamous Iron Lady. No procrastination, not even a maybe. Site closures from judge, trigger happy with mallet. Unemployment rises, deaf ears, where's the ballot? Thousands gather in picket line cohort, crowds of unsung heroes, coal miners of the North. Rejected, dejected, united they stand, illegal strikers depressed, having been shunned their demand. Dust settles from mines abandoned, and few scabs graft alone, ice gripping their hearts, chills consuming the home. Empty hands defeated, voices mute of retort, silenced unsung heroes, coal miners of the North. Stock exchange hemorrhaging, unemployment rife, family arteries ruptured, causing trouble and strife. Young men of kindred spirit, lucky to grow old. Big dreams crushed underfoot, their tale must be told. Legends buried deep in the core, renewal energy thrusts forth. Nobody remembers unsung heroes, the coal miners of the North. Their past is long gone, but history stays forever in memories told in poems and plays, reminding us all of the men below ground who once became lost, but now they are found. Above the surface where sunlight shines, a spotlight on the darkness that once was the mines. They dug deep, they fought strong for conditions they sought. We will never forget, coal miners of the North. That's so old.
Salute, eh?
Yeah, salute.
It's still punching. I still get goosebumps.
Yeah, I reckon I wrote that 25 years ago.
Do you know what it's good? Is that you find when some of the stuff
maybe
written
30 years ago.
A long time ago, when you hadn't had any learnings about how you're supposed to write poetry, and you just sat down and did it. It has a raw quality to it that
exactly.
You think, I'll write it. I mean, My wife continually chides me about don't overthink it. The first version is usually the best.
Yeah.
So tell me, I'll still get back to one
That's
thing.
very true.
So you came to London, and then you got this job. And what did you used to walk around London? You suddenly said, "I think I want to be a writer." Is that what happened? Did it happen like
Yeah, I
that?
never.
Or you're 18 years old.
Yeah.
You walked into a pub. You're having a pint. Then you're thinking, "No, I'm going to leave here and be a writer." What? What?
Oh, there are lots of flaws in your theory. So I at the time,
Probably.
I didn't drink pints. I drank hard shots of vodka and gin and so, lots of flaws in the plot. It was earlier than that. I was about 13 or 14 when I said to some friends at school, one day I'm going to write a book, and they still cite that today. They my two best friends they're in Newcastle. And they still say to me, remember when you said when we were young you were going to write a book? And I was determined even then. I knew that I was going to do it. I knew, so I don't know if I knew in my own mind I wanted to be a writer, but I knew I wanted to produce a book, which is the same thing. But I didn't acknowledge that that could be a career
But
as
you didn't
such.
know what sort of book, whether it was a poetry book, fiction, non-fiction, romance, whatever genre. I don't think when we all started, people say, "What genre do you write?" And we go, "Huh?"
Yeah. I'm still like that today, and I've been writing for a long time now. I like to play with genres, and I like to mess around with styles and push myself outside of the comfort zone, writing new types of material and in different styles. And I've got a crazy creative process.
So you've actually, we can't talk about it too much, but you've got a big job, apart from your writing, is your what people colloquially call your day job.
Yes, exactly.
Is it? Yeah. How do you write? When do you get time to write? Are you a morning writer, a late nighter, or grab it wherever you can? What do you do?
I'm not a morning anything other than a person that should be avoided until I have substantial coffee. So I am definitely not a morning person.
Okay.
My brain doesn't get into gear until I've had a walk and had a cup of coffee. I tend to always write before bed something, even if it's just a poem or something short, or it's a piece of I write a bit of business fiction for magazines and things as well. So I tend to write before bed or do a blog for, it might be for a social media platform or something. So that's common. But I write in large chunks as well when I'm traveling in the day job, as you call it. The day job is quite full on. I'm very fortunate to work in a great global company that involves a lot of travel, an outsourcing company, and I'm on the board there with the executive team. So I'm fortunate that I get to travel, and I try and avoid doing work as in day job work on flights. I try and use it for creative thinking and jotting down ideas or working on a piece or editing or writing something new. So airplane,
Yeah. Do you find you write well on planes? Yeah?
Yes. It's the best place. No one comes and disturbs you.
I agree with that.
I love it. I don't know what it is, because the air is not great. I think, you're just confined. You've got nowhere to go. You're sitting in the seat, and, that's the best thing you can do as a writer, is get your backside in the seat and stay there. No one typically disturbs you. So I tend to write really good stuff on airplanes.
I do too. Strangely enough, I find I do a lot of work on airplanes,
Yeah,
exactly. I also don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a little cloister that you're sort of stuck in. I also put on I'm not a person you really want to talk to face,
Yeah.
I'm not Mr. Friendly,
Me neither. I never, some people talk to the person next to them. I don't even look their way. I don't want to talk to anyone. Don't talk to me. I don't even want to be asked, do I want a drink or some pretzels? I go in the zone and I log on and I stay logged on and do my work. And I try not to connect to Wi-Fi is another secret on airplanes.
Absolutely,
It's the worst thing airlines could do, bring Wi-Fi onto airplanes. No Wi-Fi is gold. I can get a lot of writing done when there's Wi-Fi. No one can find it.
But Kelly, I've known you over the last couple of years for your poetry.
Yes.
How how did you sort of decide to make the? Well, tell us about your book, which just been published and released, The Pinstripe Prisoner.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, and how you sort of made the. What's the word? How did you get to write it as opposed to just sticking with poetry?
Yeah. Let's. So the book looks like that. That's it. It came
Oh,
out.
there we go.
There we go. Can you see? Yeah.
Oh, so what prison is that?
It's set in a lot in Portsmouth in South Africa, and in a small local holding cell prison in Strathspey, which is an area of Agulhas in the Cape of South Africa.
In Strand Bay. So it starts off in Portsmouth. Portsmouth was the place where they put Nelson Mandela when they took him off.
Yes, they did before Robben Island. Yeah, and it's also set in Edinburgh and in Glasgow. So there's also a number of scenes set around Barlinnie, which is a prison in the Glasgow kind of area. So yeah, there's a general theme around prison reform and so on throughout the book. So I like to write about topics that people kind of avoid. So yeah, how did
But of all the topics, why pick prisons?
I lived in South Africa, so that was where I went after London. Actually, I did a couple of years in London, and as lots of stories go, I met someone and fell in love, and he was South African, and so I packed the bags and followed him to Cape Town. And I was only 20 at that point, so I was still really young, and went off to South Africa, lived with his family actually for a good while, and it was just after Mandela was released. It was I got married in 1997, and I was 21 years old. And at the time, I just got exposed to different thoughts around crime and around how you could end up in prison. One of my husband's uncles is a prison officer. I went to stay with them for a weekend, a prison warden. And even in my Newcastle days, I had people who I knew who ended up in prison for quite serious crimes. So I always had this sort of awareness of maybe not prison life. I haven't been in prison myself, which is good to know. But there was always challenges around, this sort of criminal scene in Newcastle. And then when I moved to South Africa, it was there as well. There's violent crime there. There's no getting away from it. And there's political unrest, and a few things happened to the family as well that were challenging. My brother-in-law was held up at gunpoint in South Africa, and lots of things sort of happened that just triggered a desire to begin to write about more challenging material. And a friend of ours actually was a police officer in South Africa, and I asked him, could I get access into a prison as part of my research as I was forming this idea for a novel. And he took me inside of a prison in South Africa, and I got to see things from the inside, and the story really just mushroomed and evolved.
I'm just going to shut this. We have a blistering storm coming. I'm just shutting this room down. A little bit late. We've had winds here up to 175 kilometres an hour over the last couple of days.
Crazy.
Anyway, so I'm battening down the hatches.
Yeah.
So just that should sort that a bit. But I'm still intrigued. I mean, it sounds like it's a wonderful story. I'm going to ask you to read a little bit just now, but why though? Why prisons?
I mean,
why not a romance?
Oh,
why not a girl leaves Newcastle. She travels to South Africa, meets a South African guy, and love is in the air. Why not that story? Why not that story?
I do have a common theme in all of my writing. It's around writing for social. I'll call it social purpose. Writing about things in society where we can improve. So, prison life is one of them. We can continue to improve the way the prison systems work, and the way police forces work and the criminal system works, etc. So that is an area. I write about other topics as well in the social space. I write a lot about bullying and around domestic violence as well, and the impacts that those sort of things can have, and also a lot about mental health impact as well. So it wasn't an idea that I wanted necessarily to write about prison. It was an idea that I had, and the green shoots of the book, at the heart of it, I wanted to write about how can you be an ordinary person, a good person, that something can happen that's extraordinary in its circumstances, and it can completely derail you. It can derail your life. It can flip your life upside down and throw everything that you know on its head. And that was the concept at the heart of it. And then it evolved. And because I had been and seen some of these environments, it evolved in, okay, it could be so extreme. What would extreme look like? Extreme could be that you end up in prison or something like that.
So the protagonist is a male, right?
My protagonist is a young male South African, and the story centers around him. And bizarrely, it did actually start off as a dual point of view story, and it was I did have the love angle in there. I had a male, I had a female. It was third person, and I just couldn't get the gel to fit. And I actually got some help with I won a scholarship through KSP Writers Centre in Perth, got put on a residency and got mentor help from Fremantle Press and some experts and other authors. And I morphed the manuscript and I evolved it into a first person male perspective, just the male's perspective. There's still some love angles in there. You've got to have a little bit of hearts and, love, hearts and roses in there. But it's from a male perspective, which was also challenging. I break all the rules. Yeah.
But as a woman, is it difficult to write a male perspective on things?
It wasn't difficult to write. It was difficult to write it well and to get it right. So I wrote a first draft quite easily. I wrote a second draft and a third draft also quite easily. And I moved it from third person and dual perspective to first person male perspective. I did that work quite easily in the rewrites, but the honing in of that and the polishing and the editing and getting the tone right from inside a male mind, I needed help with that as well. So I had maybe 4 or 5, call them beta readers or early readers, that were male, and they were giving me different male perspectives and giving me some bits of context and bits around the tone where I needed to just adjust elements of the writing style from male perspective. So I got that help, which was enormously valuable, actually, including I had one male reader who just assessed it on male testosterone and male reaction if you're angry, male reaction if you're sad or you're grieving or you're in love or so that was the objective of that particular reader, was just testing me on emotionally.
So how long did all of this take from giddy up to woo?
I would love to say I was one of those writers who can write a novel a year. It took me I started writing when I was just outside of maternity leave. So my daughter was just under 1 year old, and she is now about to turn 17.
Wow.
So calculate roughly 16 years from green shoots of a concept to that book making it onto all the shelves globally, which is
okay. So could you read page 1 to us?
I can read page 1 to you. Yeah, let's do it. All right, so we are in South Africa. The Ace of Spades is tucked behind a queen and king of the same suit, and I know I'm in with a chance. My eyes blink once, an uncontrollable reflex, but every other muscle remains still. The back of my throat is dry, but I hold back from gulping to avoid my Adam's apple giving the game away. My hand is kept close to my chest. That's pretty much the way I like to live life. Always one for pulling my weight around the house, I've stocked the braai with Roykran's wood, and we're sitting out back enjoying a lazy afternoon with the fire crackling away. Pa has a poikie simmering over glowing coals he's piled to one side. He has a knack of pulling coals from the heart of the flames when they're perfect temperature for his cast iron pot. Oxtail stew has always been my older brother's favourite. Yaku likes to suck the bones to get every bit of flavour out. He's driven home from Cape Town for the weekend, enjoying time off medical school. Every so often, Pa lifts off the lid with his tongs and Ma gives the pot a stir with her wooden spoon. It's impossible not to smile at her looking so happy in a brightly coloured floral dress with the apron I bought her last Mother's Day tied over the top. It says, "Dad's the boss, unless Ma is home."
Very good. Very good beginning. Very good salute. Very good beginning.
Yeah. That first chapter, it would be 2016. I got to the point that I had a reasonably good, I felt, manuscript, and I started entering unpublished manuscripts into competitions. And in 2016, it won Best First Chapter in a competition, and it came, I think, second in the Yeovil Literary Prize, which is a big UK literary award, and longlisted for the Exeter Novel Award. So in 2016, I began to realise I actually could maybe get work published. And at that point, I didn't have any other books out. I didn't have any poetry books out, no other books published. I had a few things in magazines here and there, a poem published here, a short story there. That was the first realization that I had was, I might have got this.
I can do this.
I can maybe get this out there. It was, 2016, off the back of that early chapter. And I ended up not long after that getting picked up by a literary agent who, really got some momentum behind the book, and it went from there. But I penned six other books before this book made it to the shelves. In between,
Well, what did you pen? What do you mean? You like half finished or what?
Yeah, I published. So I've got 3 number one best-selling poetry books. Which
I know you're from your poetry. You've done your poetry. Yeah.
That one, which is Graffiti Lane, that's still doing really well. That one.
I know that one. I can comment on that one.
Yeah. I've got a copy.
Because in a recent, put Graffiti Lane back up.
That one.
Yeah, that one. Because in a recent competition, I came second to that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You were robbed, Mike. You were robbed. I've read your work, and
I'm better than
That's right. Yeah, poetry awards. Yeah, it's
I still remember that. I said,
Yeah.
Mike, you got to think. I go, what?
Yeah,
Who
that
got
book
first?
stops.
Like Kelly got first,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That
that
poetry
was
book.
funny. But
That
so
poetry-
now, what's in the pipeline now? What are you going to do now?
I have written a second novel, and it is in that awful stage of editing and polishing that will probably take me 10 years to resolve. But I'm in that sort of tidying up mode and rewriting and tightening up. But I have a finished manuscript, which is exciting. It's also
Whereabouts is it set? Well, can you give us a bit of a
it's
preview of what it's about?
It's more set in Australia, and it is around. I'm toiling between 2 titles, so I'm not going to call out a title because I'm deciding between 2.
Yeah, you have to do that. Not yet.
Oh,
Definitely not.
Well, we can have a listener vote, and they could put in the chat. I'm toiling between Daughter of a Divorcee and Daughter of a Divorcee is option 1.
Okay.
And option 2 is Jar of Flies. Not lies, flies. Jar of Flies, which is a Pearl Jam's Alice in Chains album.
And it's set, where's it set in Australia?
Mainly in Western Australia. So in and around Western Australia, where I lived for many years. And again, there's a love story underlying, but it's a lot around family trauma and real not grief in there, but around impact of extraordinary circumstances and family trauma, and how love prevails. So I've got that one penned. But my other project, I am working on. I'm always writing poetry, so I don't consider that a project. I just write poetry till I have a collection and enough in and around a particular theme to pull a collection together. I will always be writing poetry every day. I love it.
One does, yeah. You see stuff and you just write.
I see it, and I either write it in the moment or I record it on the voice app. I use technology a lot, so I might be, headphones in and talking to myself, which is just coming up with poetry ideas or trying something out verbally to see how it sounds and to get the pause right. And then I will, play with poetry styles a lot, both visually and vocally. So I'm always doing that, and yeah, I've got probably enough to put a collection together, but the theme is not quite there. So I'll keep just penning stuff until I'm happy that I can pull something together. But my other one, I'm working on another non-fiction book called Abandoned Superwoman, which I did a TEDx talk last year around being a corporate full-time working businesswoman and being effectively a writer as a second career, I guess, with now 7 books published. So that's quite a few. It's out there on the shelves, and being a mum and balancing family. And so these 3 lives: corporate life, creative life, and family life. So my TED talk was about blending these 3 different worlds. And I did my TED talk in poetic verse. And it was maybe 12 minutes, so it was quite challenging to do that. Memorize, and I love to memorize poems, and I love to do slam poetry and performance poetry. So I did my TEDx talk in poetic verse, and I now want to translate that TED talk, which got more than 100,000 views. It was amazing. It got legs of its own. I want to translate that into a non-fiction book around these 3 aspects of life. How can you be your true, full, authentic self? And embrace your passions and your hobbies and your passion points, and not give them up, to the detriment of work and family, and allow all of yourself to coexist. So I'm working on that. It's very new, but
you could bring your whole background of Newcastle and
yes.
and your family situation and the school situation and into that, as how this person got to where they were, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big believer, and in fact, I coach youths and I coach women in leadership as well. But I coach youths and I coach under at-risk youths as well, around using some of those things that have impacted you in life, potentially traumatic, but things that have been obstacles that you've had to overcome in life, and using them to advantage to allow them to shape you and allow your scars to exist and to make you stronger. And how to overcome some of those obstacles, whether they be, economic barriers or, social.
But do you want to put these into your books, or do you want to put them into TED Talks, or what?
Yeah, I'm going to definitely have some of that theme through the Abandoned Superwoman book, and that childhood piece flows through the poem that I did on TEDx as well. Those themes always come out in my writing. It's back to the social piece. I always write about, how can we create a better society? How can we leverage resilience in the face of adversity? And how can we allow our cracks and flaws and errors and, all the mistakes we make and all of our imperfections to exist, and to be okay with it, and to, become stronger as a result of those things. So I tend to always, even though I write poetry and nonfiction and, fiction and short stories and novels and whatever, they always have this urban pulse and a social theme to them that is, in my mind, designed to create conversation that matters, and that will help to create awareness in communities that will, help us to keep generating change for the better. That's
just
always
come back to that phrase you just said about conversations that matter. Now, conversations that matter could actually be in poems, short stories, and in novels.
Exactly.
So that seems to be a theme with you, conversations that matter.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, for sure. And I don't even know necessarily always where the ideas come from. It can be a tiny thing that happens, or that I've heard or seen, or that's happened to me. Or it can just, come out of, the walk in the morning with the coffee while I'm grumpy and waking myself up. But I definitely like to, I don't like to write about bubblegum things, and I like to dig deep and really challenge my own status quo thinking and my own potentially unconscious bias and, thoughts, and work through my own processes. I'm penning something, and often it comes out the other side nothing like what I intended it to. I'm not one of these writers. Writers, they map out on a storyboard and they plan, and they have everything to a T, chapter by chapter on their wireframe on what they're going to write. I don't do that. I have a concept. I will try and write a draft, and then I will rework the thing over and over and over again until I'm really satisfied.
To come back to that, so when you wrote The Pinstripe Prisoner, did you just sit down at a desk and just go?
I did exactly that. Yeah, I sat down and I knew I wanted to write, and I didn't know how the book would end at all. I just knew that I wanted to write about these couple of characters set in South Africa, and then set in, I knew my settings. I knew I wanted to set it in South Africa and in Edinburgh, and show this journey of something significant has happened and life has just gone off the rails. And how do we get this story to bring life back on the rails? And that was it. That was all I had. And I sat myself down.
I think it's quite good for people starting out writing to hear this, because they get told what they must do. But one of my favorite topics, is the character arc.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So with your characters, do they have a character arc? Do they come out a better person?
Yeah,
the same person, the worst person?
Yeah, I definitely. I aim for that character journey to occur, and for a reader to feel connected to the protagonist or antagonist. So definitely character driven for sure, and a lot of thought put into settings and unusual settings. But I think I said it earlier, I'm a one for rule breaking. So I don't abide by any rules. I don't like to be restricted by constraints of theoretical, what's good and bad writing mechanisms. And I like to feel freedom when I sit down in the chair, that I can write what I want. Sometimes I sit down, I think I'm going to work on the novel, and I write 3 poems and I don't touch the novel, and I allow that creative process just to exist. And sometimes the novel, The Pinstripe Prisoner, has sat in a drawer for 2 years untouched over a period of time where I just couldn't get myself into the right head zone to work on it. And that's okay too. I wrote something else in the interim. So I think whatever works for you. I'm a one, allow yourself, your own process. But and some people do want to plan. They're more organized.
Find your own way. Your own voice. Well, they call it your own voice.
Yeah, don't model yourself on another writer. Don't, try and write something that is going to fit the mold of something that may be published. And you're trying to force an idea there. It would have been much easier for me, and I probably would have been published much quicker if I had stuck to a crime novel that was very genre, specific, or a romance novel or whatever, and it goes right there on the shelf, easy to market, tick. And I stuck to that genre for my entire career. But for me, I want to keep evolving and learning myself, and just having that freedom to write differently.
You're still definitely evolving, or what? How do you feel?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I definitely feel I'm evolving. When I think about the poetry, I definitely feel that's evolved. I still like the early work, and I love what I did then. I don't regret anything I wrote. I'm not one of these people who say don't look at the early stuff. That's where I was as a writer back then, and some of it I still enjoy reading. But I've definitely seen my poetry evolve, and I've gone from being complete free flow, a lot of rhyme type poetry and style, to being more around different ways of pause. Sometimes I write to a traditional style. Sometimes I just throw it out the water, throw it out and just write something with free flow. And so I feel I've evolved with the material there for sure. And a lot more of my work gets picked up now by, in the literary world, in magazines and in newspapers, on the radio, TV, lots of public profile, it's just raised in the public domain. So that's
what's important. So what would you advise a younger person?
I think stick to the things you're passionate about, whatever those things are. So if you're passionate about, writing about love, or you're passionate about writing about social justice, whatever you're passionate about, and you want to, you feel a desire to write, I would say put yourself down in the chair and give yourself some freedom just to write what comes to you, and allow that for a little while till you find your own sense of style and your own sense of the way that you think and the way that you can generate words and get them down on paper. And allow yourself the luxury of a bit of time to, let yourself find its own creative zone. And then think about, okay, I want to produce something that I want to get into submission. And one of the mistakes I made, I was trying to get stuff into publication soon. I had a lot of rejections. I don't know how many rejections, but a lot. And in fact, I would know they're on a spreadsheet, so I am organized about that, but it was a lot. So I would say, pour yourself a glass of, whether it's a pint or a wine like me tonight or whatever, or a cup of coffee, sit down, let yourself write whatever comes to mind. Don't worry about being published. If one line comes out and you feel like sticking it on Instagram, go do it. And if a novel comes out and you want to rework it, go do it.
I think we get too hung up with 1,000 words a day, 2,000 words a day.
Yeah.
I recall reading somebody in Dublin talking. I think it was James Joyce. And they said, "How many words did you write today, James?" I can't do an Irish accent. And he said, "I wrote 7 words."
Yeah.
But they were good words.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm into that. I like that.
Yeah.
I write lots of social media posts. Yeah, no, I do that a lot. I write 2-line poems and I stick them on social media, and create short little films with them or something. So 7-word poems are good.
So if somebody keeps trying to contact me, somebody's very fond of talking to me today. Anyway, we've sort of run out of time. It's been wonderful talking. Sort of 45 minutes is like positively flown by. So I'll have to bid you farewell.
Yeah, farewell. Right? Yes. Cheers.
Enjoy your wine there, Kelly. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.